Hi everyone, Gavin Roberts from the Okta Workflows support team here to talk to you about streaming actions in Okta Workflows. Let's start with the what. What are streaming actions? Streaming actions are a way of interacting with records returned from action cards in Okta Workflows. Why would you use streaming actions? By default, all API calls made to Okta will result in a maximum of 200 records being returned. In order to return more than 200 records, the caller to the API must use pagination to get the next page of results. This is doable in Okta Workflows, but it's a little bit complex. Streaming actions remove this complexity and allow you to return as many records as a given API call requires. Let's take a look at how we do this. First, select the card that you're interested in using. In this case, I'm going to use a Get Users Groups card. I select my Okta connection, and in order to use streaming actions, I'm going to select Stream Records from the Result Set dropdown. Once I've defined my inputs and my outputs, I'm going to save the card. Now I need to specify a user whose groups I want to stream. This is done by Okta ID. So I can go into my directory. In this test environment, I only have one user. I select the user, select their Okta ID, copy it, and paste it into the flow. This could be a variable input as well, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm keeping it simple and explicitly defining this. Next, I'm going to need to specify a helper flow to stream this to. The inputs on this helper flow must be defined prior to choosing the flow. So I'm first going to duplicate this window. I'm going to go back to the folder that I'm in, and I'm going to do a new flow. I'm going to call this my streaming helper. I'm going to save all data that passes through the flow for debugging purposes. And I'm going to call it a helper flow. This is a prerequisite for using a streaming action. You must have a helper flow defined. There are two objects that must be defined in the helper flow. The first one is record. The second is state. The record is going to contain all of the data that is returned from the API call. The state will contain any metadata that's passed down to this flow as part of the execution. This will make more sense when I show you. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a quick flow control assign just to show what it looks like to extract the data from this. We have our record and we have our state. So we're going to turn that flow on, which will save the flow. And we're going to flip back over to our streaming demo. Again, going to save all the data that goes through this flow, save, and choose my flow. Now, any data that's returned from a Get Users Groups from this record is going to be streamed one at a time. This is where the state object comes in. Let's say I wanted to make available the Okta ID of the user whose data I'm streaming. I can create a key value pair called ID, and this will pass that data down into the helper flow. Let's go ahead and save this. We'll turn the flow on, and we'll test it. And I'll take you through what this looks like. So the fact that it streamed 5 records, this tells us that there were 5 records returned to the API call listing the groups of the user with this Okta ID. In the parent, we see only one instance of this flow having executed. But if we go into the flow history of the helper, we can see each individual instance of those groups. And we see here the information about those groups that were streamed down. We can manipulate this data in any way that we'd like and take whatever actions we'd like off of this. The same goes for state. Anything that we defined as an input will be passed down to preserve that contextual information in the helper flow. You can see here, because I defined a key of ID and a value of the Okta ID of the user that this information pertains to, I can now use that data in future steps. For example, if I wanted to remove this user from all groups that they are a member of, I could create a flow like this. We take a look at what the object looks like for the record. We can see the group ID is listed here as ID. Now that I know that that's true, I can make this an object and give it the label of ID. And now I'll be able to use that ID in future steps. So for example, if I wanted to remove that user from all of their listed groups, I can make a call to remove that user from the group. Let's look for that card. Remove user from group. We're going to take that ID. We're also going to do the same thing here because I've defined a key of ID. That's where that state value comes into play. The individual returns from the API don't have the contextual information about which user this pertains to. But if I define that in my state, I will get that data in the helper flow so that it's available. So let's go ahead and save this. Now there is one issue that we're going to run into here. That is, this user is a member of the everyone group. The everyone group can't be removed from a user. So I'm going to put in some logic to stop the call to remove the user from that group. We're going to do a continue if, and we're going to say if this is not equal to the ID of the everyone group, then we continue. The message is not necessary, but it can be helpful for debugging if you are trying to determine why this condition was not true. This gives you an idea as you're looking through the flow history. So let's run this one more time and we'll see what that looks like. We can see again that it streamed 5 records to the helper flow. We look at the helper flow history. In this case, the group name was the test1 group. That didn't match the condition of the continue if. Therefore, it continued along and removed the user from that group. The same is true for this one, this one, this one, and this one was the everyone group, so we didn't call for the remove user from group action. This is the simplest possible demo of how to use streaming actions. Use cases can get quite a bit more complicated than this, but I hope this quick demonstration has helped to clarify how to use streaming actions. Thanks for watching.